Okay, in one of the last episodes, actually a couple of episodes ago, we started our journey through Windows Server, and we stopped roughly around the era of Windows Server 2000. So now it's time to continue that journey, and we're going to discuss all of the Windows Server versions from 2003 up to 2022. We're going to discuss some of their strong points, some of their negative sides, for example. We're going to talk about experiences of using them and kind of like give our verdict on some of the versions and which ones we liked the best. Okay, with that being said, this is a new episode of That IT Show podcast. Let's roll the intro. Hit the road.
Okay, so let's start with the first question. As is the custom here, do you remember Microsoft Comic Chat?
Yes.
It was
Do you remember Microsoft Mail?
Yes, but I want to talk about Microsoft Comic Chat. Because this is the time of it. This is the time of Microsoft Internet Explorer 4.0. This is the time of Windows 95 and 98. And this was the time when Microsoft decided that the best thing that they can do is auto-generate comic strips that are going to contain IRC chats. Mm-hmm. And you could be basically a guy with a paper bag on his head and quite a few characters more.
Oh, man.
Do you remember those?
Yeah, I do.
So the MSN chat that became Microsoft Comic Chat, that became Microsoft Chat 2.0, that became nothing.
Whatever.
Does that remind you of anybody?
A lot of killed products?
Yes.
Google?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I think that we could say that what was happening to Microsoft in the 90s is something that is happening to Google right now.
History has a nasty habit of repeating if you don't know it.
Yes. And I think this is one of those things. So let's begin. Where do you want to start?
Can I ask a counter question?
Yes.
Why the hell do you want to start with Comic Chat?
Because it was the birth of the best font available in Windows.
Comic Sans?
Comic Sans.
Okay.
So it was the best, the most trollish word font.
Can you see what I'm dealing with here?
Yes, so the most trollish font that ever existed in Windows, and it has long surpassed its useful shelf life in any product, but it's still being used.
Yes.
So this is one of those amazing things that is just a relic of the past, and and everybody keeps using it.
Okay. What does that have to do with Windows Server?
Basically, I wanted to start with the most annoying fact that I remember about the old Windows. Mm-hmm. Because to be completely honest, in the 90s, I was happy with what Windows was doing.
How is that possible?
Windows 95 and 98 weren't that bad. They were quick to adopt the new technologies. They weren't that bad. For example, they were able to support USB barely a couple of years after it hit the market.
Can I say something?
Yes.
A funny fact about Windows 95. I usually say this fact because it's like a template joke that you can always say about Windows 95. Windows 95 is our favorite operating system on a client, for a client version of Windows, that we did not mind reinstalling twice a week.
But okay. Let's roll with that, but let's say that what Microsoft did is I'm going to show you are going to show the Microsoft family tree of kernels, because what I was doing was I was trying to see what was the history of Microsoft kernels, and the thing is that Microsoft actually started developing Windows in 85 or 86. Then developed the same kernel until the Windows ME, the operating system that nobody talks about, because
And
nobody.
we are not going to talk about it.
And I think that we should.
Actually, we should. And it's going to be an episode that is going to be fully cursed, and we're going to have bleeps all over it.
No. I want to talk about Microsoft Windows ME.
Not today. No.
I have a real reason because I
Okay, not today.
But let me just make my point. Let's go on a tangent. So the idea is this: Windows 98 second edition
Okay.
was probably the best of all the Microsoft Windows up until that point. When we are talking about desktop systems,
SE? Okay, I agree.
yes. And then came Windows ME. And
Arguably the crappiest OS Microsoft ever made.
yes, and actually, I don't know of a single person who actually used Windows ME for longer than a week.
I tried. Can I tell you?
I tried, but then I gave up because I was used to reinstalling my Windows every couple of weeks. So just switching back to Windows 98 SE was a simple thing. So I cannot talk about how Windows ME was supposed to be bad,
Okay.
because it was so bad that I completely deleted it and then I completely forgot about it.
Okay.
And then I switched to NT or Windows 2000, and then I completely went off the rails with Windows. So 2000 XP and Vista and so on came later. And those were just simply the different sub tree or a different build version of the kernel. So completely different kernel.
Okay.
Do we agree that Windows 98, Windows 98 second edition were the best?
From that era, yes.
Do we agree that the NT kernel was the best?
Yes, it still is.
Okay, arguably, because it is the same kernel that is running Windows and Windows 11. So no.
You like Windows 11?
Yes, I like Windows 11, but I think the thing I like about Windows 11 is that this is probably the single version of Windows that got all the decrepifier stuff on the market basically at the same time when Windows 11 was released.
Okay.
So you could turn Windows 11 back into Windows 10 more or less a week after the release, because all the different tools that enabled you to go back in time and use the features of Windows 10 was available. And Windows 11 is going to come with the additional Copilot.
Can I go back to ME while you asked for it? Do you know what I used Windows ME last for?
I don't know.
You probably forgot. I think I told you the story. Let
me guess, HP switches.
No. Far cry from that. Actually, I had a very, very big Mac case, big tower. They were popular in those days, with God knows how many disk drives inside, SCSI and whatnot. And I had Cubase and Nuendo on them, and I was trying to record a session, multi-channel session with the band.
Okay.
Do you know how that ended up? I
It didn't.
almost smashed my computer, because the second I pressed the record button, blue screen.
But that was a normal operation module with trying
Modus
to use
operandi.
anything that wasn't standard hardware with Microsoft.
Really?
Basically, if you had any device, and by any I mean including some mices and including stuff like sound cards and so on, you would end up with the blue screen because they were running in Ring 0 and nobody cared. So a single error in the driver, and God knows that there were errors in drivers.
Yes.
And the Windows would come crashing down, and that would be it.
Yes.
So I'm just not I'm not surprised that you had problems with Windows ME and recording.
Had problems. That's how you define it.
Yes, but what I want to understand is why did you even end up with Windows ME and trying to do this?
Well, I was still very much in my Yasmin does beta testing mode of everything. So that's one of the reasons. And the second reason is that when it worked for brief periods of time, then it was a little bit more capable than Windows 98 SE. But for brief periods of time, which were measured in
yes,
seconds.
yes. But the problem was that I'm not in my beta testing versions. I'm usually alpha testing in production, and this is a completely different thing.
That's the way we need to do it.
But this is the thing that makes you springy. So you are basically prepared for everything.
Yeah.
You keep yourself on your toes. So it's like Keita and Inspector Clouseau. So just you.
No.
That's the thing. The Microsoft is the Keita here.
Yeah, I know. No.
Okay.
I refuse that. And
Anyways.
I think I'm within my rights to refuse that, because Windows ME, sorry to say, but every single time somebody mentions it, I just get unpleasant hairs on my back that I didn't know existed.
I don't have any reaction to it because
Yeah.
I haven't used it for more than, I don't know, 10 days. And then I gave up.
I
That's
really
it.
tried.
I didn't. I tried. I tried a little bit.
I remember. So one of the things that that's very let's say very me is remembering stuff from that age. Reason being that I remember reading about Windows and OS2 in magazines and reading those things religiously. I also remember the day when 95 came out. I was very happy when 95 OSR2 came out because of pan-European language support and all of those things. So I can remember very distinctly from those days that when I had Windows 95, I used to reinstall them a lot. And as you said in the previous episode, that those were the days of RQs and jumpers and whatnot. Very much so, for input-output address, RQ and whatever. After that, I went to Windows 98. 98 was, second edition was really good.
Yes, but I think that the Windows really came of age when XP was released.
Agreed.
And I think that this was the time when Microsoft actually realized that they need the desktop and the whole idea of how stuff should work based on Windows 98. Mm-hmm. And they need the stability of the kernel that came with NT.
Okay.
And then they actually made an operating system that made sense.
Yeah, and NTFS and all those beautiful things.
And they didn't.
They lost the memo.
They did repeat that error any
They lost the memo. That's what I figured.
But let's talk about this, because I'm looking at the kernel tree. Mm-hmm. And I just want to do an honorable mention to Windows CE, Windows Pocket PC, Windows Mobile, Windows Phone 8.
Please don't touch Windows Mobile. I had Asus A636, my Pocket PC, which was pretty much awesome and got me through some very, very interesting journeys with the GPS that I had in that one. So yeah, that's good.
I'm just going to say
worked well, actually.
That mobile version of Windows was something that so Windows Phone 8 was something that this was the first version of Windows, or Windows Phone 7 to be more correct.
I'm waiting for you to start dissing on Windows Phone 7, and then I'm going to kick the crap out of you.
They had an operating system that was amazing for that time, mm-hmm. But this was the only single mobile phone that kept blue screening while in call. So
never happened to me.
I got the SPV, so the first version of the Windows Mobile that was available for testing, and it kept, for some reason, crashing during the call, mm-hmm. And it was an amazing experience because I'm used to disconnects on the mobile network. I'm used to batteries running out. Stuff happening for whatever reason, but my mobile never crashed during the call, and to be more precise, I never got a feeling when you are talking to somebody, then he vanishes from the phone. You take a look at the phone is rebooting. This is the only phone that gave me that experience almost every time.
Okay, let me counter that, or maybe upgrade what you said. I had HTC HD7. I still keep that as a backup phone 12 and a half years after it was released. Actually, 12 and a half years after I bought it, because it was released in 2010. I still have it in my car as a backup phone. It still works with the original battery. And it is one of my favorite mobile phones to ever exist for reasons that I'm about to mention. And this is coming from somebody who, just like Yasmin, lived through the whole Nokia revolution. I had all of the communicators and the 8 series Zippo phones and whatnot. So I was lucky in that sense. But HD7 had, especially because of the OS, has a very, very like special place in the history of the phones that I used. And the reason why, it was a single core phone. I think it had 1.5 gigahertz CPU, something like that.
Okay.
It was faster than anything on the market at that time. When I say faster, it was a million times faster
And I
than
know
any
HTC,
Android, any
HTC,
iOS.
HTC used to be.
No, it was because of the Windows thingy and the interface. If you ask me, is still the interface with all of those blocks that keep on circling around, whatnot. For me, it's still the most elegant interface I've ever seen on a mobile phone. And that's subjective, of course.
I'm going to agree with you because the tiles, they were called tiles. The tiles were something that made actually made the fresh interface that made sense. But the problem was that what didn't happen is that Microsoft didn't fulfill the promise that they were trying to do. They were trying to emulate macOS. And they were trying to, at this point in time, they were trying to interconnect both the mobile system and the mobile ecosystem and the desktop ecosystem. And they miserably failed at it.
Yes, still one of the best phones that I had, probably in top 3. And I basically spent a lifetime as a journalist as well, using top level phones like forever. That phone was superb. And the reason why all of that failed is lack of long-term support in terms of the applications, for the most part. There were problems with mobile banking applications and whatnot, although they existed for a while. But when they went to whatever it was, 7.5 or 8 or whatever the next version was, then apps stopped working, and after that, soon enough, the whole platform was canned.
Yes, but this is the Microsoft's fault, because Microsoft was trying to overreach way over in the market that they didn't understand, didn't believe in, and were unable
for a company that is definitely guilty of that in that point in time. I would say that they did an awesome job of creating a mobile OS that really worked well and fast, and was, for me, it was super reliable. But the market was already, just like when you play cards, the cards were already dealt out. So they came way too late to the market with all of this.
Okay, 20 minutes in. Let's
talk about the original topic.
Let's try to remember what the original topic was, and let's go historically.
Of course.
So, do you remember what was the first version of the Windows that got USB support?
I have a retro PC at home with Windows 98. USB works.
Yes, but if you remember the famous introduction to Windows 95 and the plug and play, when when the plug and play broke down in front of the audience, when Bill Gates was plugging in the scanner, this was one of those defining moments when people said, "Okay, this technology is not what they're promising us. It is going to happen," and I think. Okay, this was the first version that got USB. USB was an amazing, and still is an amazing technology. But people don't even realize how complex and strange this became to be for the people who were used to using parallel ports, COM ports, RQs, PS2, having to shut down the computer to be able to connect the device, and so on and so on and so on. So USB was one of those things. What I missed was that NT4 was unable to use USB.
Yeah, I remember that as well.
And this is one of those things that I actually missed.
I had, I'm sure I told you this story, but one of the first things that I used to use when I was back in college. So I traded one of my big synthesizers for a Dell laptop. And for a couple of years, my daily driver was that Dell laptop with Windows 2000 Advanced Server. The reason is very straightforward. It never crashed on me. It always worked really well. It was a little bit sluggish, because it was more hungry for hardware than that laptop could provide. But given that, everything that I used to do on that laptop, which consisted of just regular, let's say, office stuff, browsing, secure shell, connecting to internet via old school technologies and whatnot, that worked beautifully. And printing and Word and Excel of the old versions, all of that worked really well. So that was actually something that I used for quite a while, and I wasn't the only one. We had a small group of people which were a part of the local IEEE office that was located in our college. 3 or 4 of us had the same configurations. Same configurations in terms of OS.
This was the way back then when Microsoft Windows Server, when you installed it, basically installed all the bells and whistles the same as the desktop. Because I remember that 2003 was the first one that actually asked you what do you want to install, and didn't install everything, and then asked
it had
you
a
to install. Yes.
crappy initial version of the Server Manager, which later on became the staple application on Windows Server, and it even is today. A lot of people still use it. I use it on a daily basis as well. Nothing against it. It is .NET PowerShell based.
I must say that I used Windows 2003 way into the 2010s
Me too.
as a router,
Okay.
because it was, I wouldn't say it was a capable router, but for what I had to do, it was amazing on crappy hardware. It was running completely stable for years, and it didn't require much memory, it didn't require much disk. So it was something that you could consider a reasonable operating system for the particular case.
My first, let's say, production level introduction to Windows 2003 was when I took over system administration and engineering for a company that I still work for on a contractual basis. They had Windows 2003 server with file server, with domain controller and Exchange on top of that. Basically, when it worked perfectly, which was 99% of the time. When it didn't, a reboot took 50 minutes. And I remember 2003 very well, especially from the era. While we're on the topic of router, routing and remote access service was basically broken since then. And even then, there, like, out of 5 routing options that you have there, only 1 or 2 of them worked. You were just lucky in that particular scenario that you were probably using the NAT scenario, network address translation.
No, I was using something even more simple. I was just using bridging.
Yeah, that worked as well.
Because Windows 98 was unable to bridge adapters.
Yeah, there were no internet connection sharing and whatnot. That came later. Yeah, I know. So yeah, 2003 for me is very close to being on the top, just from practical experience, to being very close to the top of the operating systems that actually kind of taught me how to think about Windows Server operating systems. And for the most part, it was super reliable, unlike its later cousin 2003 R2, which was awful for everything that I used to do.
But what I wanted to say is that one of the things that Windows 3.11 and Windows 95 did for me is that they made me dual boot into Linux. And this is one of those things that I think I'm most grateful to Microsoft for.
Okay, I'm also grateful for the same era, same thing, but specifically because I wiped all of my data while trying to do it for the first couple of times, because it wasn't easy to do, and there was no documentation.
I must say that I haven't wiped my data a single time.
Yeah, I did multiple times until I realized how it works.
I was one of those lucky persons that had 2 separate hard disks.
I had them too, but it was still. This was the era when I started doing some work on the side. So this was the era when I fell in love, in a sense, in terms of technology in SCSI. So I had loads of SCSI disks inside, and a tower of external SCSIs, and SCSI scanner, ScanJet by HP, which I still have to this day, and it still works. That's more than 20 years later, 25 years later.
This was the time when people were actually trying to create machines that worked, not units to be sold. And this is the topic for another episode.
It is, and I'm preparing for it for a while now, as you know, because there are some experiences from that era that you cannot convey by talking about it. There are things that need to be demonstrated in a practical
The thing is
sense.
that what I'm planning to do, I'm planning to get my old LaserJet 4100 because it still exists. I tracked
Where's
it
my
down.
4L?
I have no idea. But I have my original 4100 that is now roughly over 500,000 copies in. And I tracked it down. It still works. It is still printing. It's in a club near Zagreb in the amateur club. And they are doing it for their document printing. And it still works. It has the original hard drive in it. So the PostScript hard drive. And it works.
Good, it's indestructible. Actually, as I said in one of the previous episodes, my counterpart to that was 4L. Giving that one away was probably one of the saddest days in my IT life. It worked perfectly. It was still functioning like I got 4L when I was still in high school. And prior to that I had the dot matrix Epson LX800, which printed a crap load of pages. But when we had I don't know which year it was it the first or the second year of the high school, we got Latin, and then we had to do those Latin sayings and whatnot, so I printed them for the whole class, and that broke my Epson. After that I got 4L, because dot matrix and all of that, they are not 9 pins. It wasn't 24 pin, it was a 9 pin, so that one broke because it was 35 or 6 people in the class, and it was like 50 pages for each and every one of them.
I think that you are right now talking about things that probably most of the people who are listening to us don't know even existed.
That's
so
okay.
let me just do a little breakdown. While on talking about Windows, in the episode about Windows, let's talk about how dot matrix printers used to work. So
They still work. They're still heavily in
They
use.
used to have a number of pins that were impact the toner or the ribbon,
Yeah.
and then transfer the ink to the paper.
Very similar to how the typewriters work.
So they tried with 9 pins, then realized that this is not enough. Then they switched over to high resolution 24.
Yep.
It is a high resolution 24, and for some reason nobody tried to do the switcheroo with the number of droplets and the number of things. They didn't do the 48 or 96 pins later.
Damn it. That would be fun. They were incredibly noisy.
I think that they were less noisy than the line printers that I used to work with.
Yeah, but still very noisy.
You remember those line printers that were the size of washing machines,
Yes.
and that had basically 10 centimeters thick echo cancelling isolation to be able to
Which
actually be
didn't do
inside
much.
the office. No, the office was shaking, but at least you could talk near the printer. But okay, so let's try to go back to the Windows for the third time.
Okay, 2003. That's the topic. It had. It was the first time that Microsoft introduced a server-based wizard called Manager Server Wizard or something like that, which is basically precursor to the Server Manager that we still have to this very day. You could use it to do similar things to Server Manager, so deploy roles, features, whatnot. Later on to be called roles, features, and whatnot. Back then they were services. It had one of the biggest advancements in 2003, if I remember correctly, was the addition of Shadow VSS driver and Shadow copies and the whole system, which basically, when you look at it now, 20 years later, backwards, across your shoulder in the history of IT, was one of the most important things that ever happened in Microsoft world. The capability of VSS is something that we still use to this very day to do backup.
I think that Microsoft gets a lot of heat for doing things.
I mean, there was Shadow copies before, but they implemented it for file servers as well, for shares. Super
as I said,
important.
Microsoft is getting a lot of heat for not doing things, but most often than not, they are introducing technologies when they should be introduced. But
Okay.
what they usually miss is the opportunity to actually create the technology that works. So they introduce the technology, and it takes too much time to fine tune. And this is one of those things where I like Linux because it is Linux.
For all the complexity there is underneath, it's still quite standardized.
Yes, this is one thing, and the other thing is that when something needs to change, it changes. Microsoft is reluctant to change between versions of Windows, or they are reluctant to introduce new technologies into the current version of Windows because they are waiting for the next version. So sometimes it takes them a couple of years to introduce something that should be fixed, and basically something that should be fixed right now sometimes waits for a couple of years, simply because there is a cycle that needs to be done inside Microsoft because of the roadmap that Microsoft defines.
Okay, on top of that, there were a couple of other additions. They were improving the terminal services. It had the new version of Internet Information Services, basically their version of web server, which was built within an actual web services role. And on top of that, there were some multimedia things that they did, some media services or whatever it was called. And it was, I think, the first Windows Server operating system that supported wireless. It had a wireless service that enabled us to use wireless too, which still to this day is something that we sometimes need, actually, believe it or not.
I would call it we actually need it, not sometimes. We could actually be using it more than sometimes, but people gave up on the notion of Microsoft Windows Server being able to do anything by itself. So we are shifting wireless 4G and so on into the routers because we gave up on the idea of the operating system being able to support it. And one of the reasons is because Microsoft usually screws it up.
Okay, if you say so. I had a reminiscence of something that happened in the past happening in front of me.
No, I have a strong opinion about having a operating system that you are able to connect directly to the internet,
Which you could do with Windows
AI
95.
Linux, and having an operating system that should never ever in any case be connected to the internet, being any Windows that are right now on the market.
Can I counterpoint that for you for a second?
You can try.
I will succeed this time. Do you remember the difference between, so roughly around the time when internet was popularized in Croatia? That was basically around 95, 96, okay? There were some small spots of internet happening before that. I'm talking about the year when it started exploding. That was 95, 96. That's when the academic organization also introduced some of the modern things
Yes.
that you could connect to, and there were some on different institutes and different colleges and whatnot. If you wanted to connect via your Linux desktop at home to internet, what did you need?
SLIP.
Which, yes, the SLIP protocol, that's okay, but that's easy to do. You can just compile it in a kernel as a module, everything cool. Which application and which file did you need for that? Do you remember? What was the most commonly used way to dial internet back then from Linux?
I actually don't remember.
What are the name of the switches that we use on the motherboards? Do you remember their names? DIP switches. It was
switches.
DIP.
Yes. Okay.
DIP. You had DIP scripts.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
So you had to create the configuration file for that and whatnot. On the
Okay.
other side of the fence, if you look in Windows, which application did you use to connect to internet? Do you
WinSock.
remember? Trumpet WinSock. One of the most loved applications of that era.
Yes, but
It was way easier to configure that, although you had to know all of those just like in DIP partially, you had to know all of those pesky modem codes, ATX3, M0, M1,
Okay,
whatnot.
but-
But it was way easier to connect by using Trumpet WinSock than by using Linux, because back then nobody was using Linux. from us, couple
partially
of us.
true, but I'm not going to give on that because you basically need a third-party solution, as you always do when using Microsoft, to be able to do something that Linux was providing out of the box.
It wasn't providing it out of the
Okay,
box.
nothing is provided out of the box. The kernel is provided out of the box.
Yes.
But the box contains a free utility
Yeah.
that enables you to connect, unlike Trumpet WinSock. And
It was
unlike,
free utility.
and unlike Netscape Navigator, that was
It was excellent.
okay.
When compared to the competition, it was excellent.
But I remember way back then when I was excited that Microsoft Microsoft Internet Explorer is going to come out, and it was first time that
Are
somebody.
you sick or something?
No. I just remembered that you were happy that there was another technology that is going to be available that you can test it.
I was very happy with Netscape because we were using it everywhere, especially in college.
Yes, I know, but Netscape was working. Microsoft Internet Explorer was trying to, as they did in Windows, so version 1 was crappy. Version 2,
3, 4, 5,
version
6,
2
whatever.
basically didn't
Up
exist.
till basically 9 it was useless.
No. But version 4 was something that could be called useful.
No.
It was running correctly. It had some features like caching that enabled it to be sort of kind of on par with what Netscape was doing at the time.
Okay,
But
next.
the application, but let's now just switch just a second before you start listing all the different versions. I want to remind us that there were applications that were running in Windows.
Yes.
So the default applications, and this is something that is not, we are not used to now because we're using everything on the web. So we had Outlook,
Yes.
Outlook Express.
Yes.
We had
Outlook Express being the application that was
one of
free.
the best mail clients.
It was way better than the commercial version of Outlook back then for a variety of reasons.
Then we had Internet Explorer and
Real
bundling.
audio, real media, or favorite stuff.
Real audio, but they were not part of the Windows.
Yeah, I know.
But Microsoft bundled Internet Explorer. Microsoft bundled the games.
Yes, and system sounds.
System sounds. They bundled.
Disk utility, disk fragmentation utility, disk management utility
But
for
we could call it utilities that are needed.
The only thing that we needed
But
was
you also got the chat.
Solitaire.
You got the Solitaire. You got the.
And then they also added dial-up networking.
Yes, but the applications were not
And
that
hyperterminal.
bad. The applications themselves were not that bad.
No, they weren't. They worked actually rather well. I agree.
And the games were pretty nice.
Let's talk about that in another episode. I think we're going to agree on the fact that loads of games from that era are much better than what we have today.
Okay. So
2003 R2 is our next topic. For me, awful operating system for a variety of reasons, one of which I'm going to describe in a second. One of the fundamental reasons why it was crappy from my personal experience was the introduction of .NET 2.0, which meant some changes to PowerShell, which I really disliked. Coming back to that topic in a second. They introduced Microsoft Management Console, new version with 2003 R2, MMC 3.0 or something like that, which we still use to this very day. It's one of the most useful things when you're doing system engineering and administration. If you need to add additional snap-ins, configure certificates and local users, stuff like that. Then 2003 had a version of one of the first versions of ADFS. Coincidentally, 20 years later, this is one of the fundamental technologies that we use nowadays for authentication, especially on the web or in Azure or in cloud, generally speaking. They also introduced DFS in 2003 R2, distributed file system. To be quite honest, I liked it from the get-go, apart from one thing. It just didn't work until 2012.
DFS was then just a three-letter abbreviation that got
Looked cool on the marketing material.
It looked cool. It was promising a lot of things, and none of those work.
Until 2012, just so
But
clear.
DFS was a great idea.
Still is.
What I always wanted to express as an opinion is I never understood why Microsoft screwed up MMC, the console,
Yes.
so much that they didn't provide us with a central repository for all the consoles that are available on the.
You can
operating
actually
system.
still use it. There are
you can use
utilities
it.
for that.
Yes, but you need a special utility to be able to
RSS.
see which yes,
But they are very version bound.
they are version bound, they are different, but there is no a single utility that would be a repository of all the consoles that are available right now on your operating system.
Deploy RSets, as I said.
But it's also workaround. It's
Yes.
not that what I want to see, and I didn't understand why. I didn't understand why Microsoft
I
created.
could never understand why they canned the idea of management console snap-ins since Exchange 2010, which had a management console which everybody used. And a lot of people were very sorry for not having it anymore because everything needs to be on the web.
Yes, but we also have right now the certificates of the console that you
We
can
always still use NMCs for that.
you must use because there is no
You
other
don't-
way.
It's not a must. It's just much better than doing it via GUI, especially with all the problems with modern day browsers and ASPX pages on this certification service.
Yes,
Because you
when
have to
you're
have
talking about
Explorer.
when you're talking about Windows,
Yes.
Windows Server Windows.
Yes.
But when you're talking about desktop, there is no other way to do it.
Correct.
And if you need to fix something with the certificates, and usually you do, especially when you are dealing with third-party applications and USB sticks that are mutually incompatible and exclusive, when we are dealing with certificates, you sometimes need a console, and there is the only way. This is the only way to deal with the certificates.
That's an excellent point because Microsoft heavily changed the architecture of the way in which they work with certificates after 2003. I think it was very much to the detriment of many things, but that there is a positive side to that. They started focusing on standardizing the way in which you work with certificates from the perspective of smart cards, which meant that everybody had to be compatible, which was a good thing at the end of the day. And nowadays it's much easier to integrate smart cards into our environments because of it.
Yes, and
But so there's pro and there's cons.
I was just today I was searching for something, and I was trying to see what is the simplest way for me to do a keyless or a key login that is going to be enable me to be as secure as possible, but at the same time don't require me to use a password. So I was researching different keys, tokens, whatever, hellos, cards, passphrases, and so on. And I realized that Microsoft actually did their homework.
Yeah.
And they actually were able to more or less safely authorize the users using different methods sometime from 2003 and 2005, because this is the time when they realized that they're going to be pushing into the banks, they're going to be pushing into the enterprise market.
TUFA was the reason why,
Yes.
and banks specifically, and I know this from personal experience.
Yes, and
because I had loads of requests back then to implement two-factor authentication. They specifically requested smart cards. And even to this day, you have group policies in Windows Server that can basically manage the way in which you use the smart cards. If you remove it, screen locks, stuff like that. And ISO 27001 premises require such a functionality. So this still works to this very day, for which, they made my life a hell of a lot easier.
And this is one of those things that came also with support from vendors, because they actually included smart card readers directly in the laptops.
Yes, but there is a big but to that. None of the vendors that I work with, and there were quite a few, HID, Crescendos, whatnots, I tried many of those. None of them had good documentation about how to issue certificates. That was a big problem back then. I remember this from personal experience. I've spent weeks trying to deduce how to do that and how to create enrollment agents so that you can have a central station.
But I think that this was back way then when you were supposed to just call.
Yeah, I refuse to do that.
Call somebody, call a guy, and the guy is going to be in triple digits as soon as he says hello, and then in four digits when he says, okay, this is how it needs to be done.
Okay.
So consultants were much more important back way then for simple things, because to be honest, things that were complicated way back then is something that we are doing on daily basis today.
Yeah, that's the way in which the world changed.
And
2 more features.
Yes.
Very important.
Okay, now more.
2 more features, very, very important, very reminiscent of 2003 R2. FSRM, File Server Resource Manager, file screening, quotas, and all of those things. Quotas we had on Unix for decades before. And the second feature, and this is a laughable one, but it's still very important for future of Microsoft Virtual Server 2005. This was the first real foray into virtualization. And if you had the 2003 R2 Enterprise Edition, they still had Enterprise back then, so standard Enterprise and Data Center, you could run up to 4 virtual machines by using Virtual Server 2005 and Enterprise license covered 1+4. Actually, I remember from those days, a lot of people were using this. This is my personal experience, at least. But that was the beginning of their story of shifting towards the ideas that VMware was already using, and we had in Linux as well, which is the story of virtualization.
But I need to check because I want to check when did the virtual PC come into the Windows.
It was it was a separate feature.
Yeah, yes, and yes, and no, but because way back then, the virtual PC was the way for people to do two things. Microsoft didn't want to do the virtualization in the first instance. They didn't want to do the virtualization on the desktop market, but they had to because they had so many technologies that they wanted to get rid of that they had to have a way of running them in a separate sandbox or a separate machine.
Okay.
So what they basically did is that they recreated all the previous versions of whatever was in the virtual machine and then just put it in a virtual PC.
But they kept very similar technology in Windows 7 or 8, that some kind of a client virtualization to like within application. So they had virtual PC appearing later as well. But all in all, the pet peeve and the reason why I had huge misgivings with 2003 R2 is the reason that I mentioned first, which is PowerShell 2.0, which fundamentally changed some of the existing PowerShell commandlets. And I had a situation in which that really came and bite me in the behind. Back then I was trying to work out some additional details in terms of logging of remote servers by using PowerShell. That's when I started using it because that's when it came out. And I had to substantially modify the code depending on the Windows version. So that pissed me off to no end. Actually, I told this story today to our students because one of the students asked me what was one of my defining moments of asking myself, what is Microsoft doing and why are they doing some of the things that they do?
I must say that to be completely sarcastic, I'm a little bit scared of you right now because you shouldn't be defining your moments by what Microsoft is trying to decide.
No, but by Microsoft defining moments. That was the question.
Because one of my defining moments was the Challenger catastrophe, and this doesn't mean
no, that doesn't meet the same criteria.
Yes, but I think this is on the same page with Microsoft deciding.
No. My story doesn't appear as a blip on the radar compared to that.
Yes, so, but okay, yeah. But I remember. I was just looking up because I remember that the PowerShell was used to be called Monad. This is the name of the project. And the reason why I remember this is because I was excited about Microsoft finally gaining the capability of being able to run something from the command line. And that command line not being the CMD from the from scraps what remained of DOS. And
to that point, what about VBS? It was very popular back then.
VBS.
I used to use it.
And VBA.
Yeah.
Because yes, but I was expecting something to become. I wanted something to bridge the gap between batches and batch languages and batch interpreters. And
you wanted the shell script type of language, shell type of language, not the programming language that VBS were.
Yes, I wanted an interpreter first, and I wanted something that was able to be running scripts without compiling. And this is one of those things that Microsoft is still missing today, but they fill the gap with the PowerShell. But I was expecting something else. I was expecting the tools that are going to generalize interaction between the command shell and GUI. I wasn't expecting that they're going to be providing you. I was expecting basically the auto-8 or the things that enable you to just use the GUI directly from the PowerShell, from the command shell, without specifically addressing a particular application. Yeah. And they went the other way.
Okay, and I think that they made the right decision, by the way. PowerShell is pretty much, for a few kinks that sometimes happen, most of the time is just superb. Without it, I don't know where Microsoft would be right now.
I would be pretty much happier if they went the other way and they created the API or a different version of the API that would be able to be called from the command shell.
Okay, I completely understand that way of thinking, but you do not you are employing the old general after the battle principle. It's easy to judge that now. And I think that you're also at the same time half wrong. I think the best way would be to have both.
Yes.
This is the way in which most other vendors have it. So VMware has Power CLI and API, REST API for everything. That's what we would probably like more.
Right now, once the idea of API was introduced, yes. I would probably call it hooks or shell hooks or whatever. But now that we have APIs, I'm always wondering, why is Microsoft still not deciding on putting the API in every application that they create?
They have mostly APIs for almost all of the apps that they have, apart from the services.
Yes, but this is a big part.
Yeah, I know.
And this is one of those things that what is the most held grudge against Microsoft is that they are inconsistent in what they do. Yeah. And this is just one of those things that which I understand, but I
dislike with passion.
Not only this, but I would like to see somebody write down on a whiteboard somewhere in Microsoft on Microsoft campus to say, please remember, we have the time. When you have the time, just do the API hooks inside your application. So no rush, no
take your time, hurry up.
Take your time, but just when you're implementing something, please remember that there are people who are not using the GUI.
Okay. The next version is 2008, and I refuse to talk about that POS. Okay. Reason being because it didn't work, it never worked, and it had the original version of Hyper-V, which was utterly useless. But, and it's a big but, after that came, if you ask me, the best operating system that they ever made, which is 2008 R2. For me, and I still have them running in production on more than one location, they are pretty much unbreakable. Whatever you throw at them, they work. I have a couple of different clients running, for example, Exchange clusters on top of Windows 2008 R2. Those machines have been running for years and years, apart from occasional, let's say, power outage if the UPSs can handle that long of a power outage. But generally speaking, I remember for two of my clients, I connected to that and those environments with Exchange clusters twice in more than 10 years to check something that didn't work, and it usually required a single command.
I'm going to agree with you on that because I know that a lot of people are still running 2008 R2.
There's a reason for that.
And Microsoft is quietly acknowledging it. Because if you remember a couple of years ago when there was one of the security scares that were much more apart and much bigger thing way back then, that Microsoft issued a retrograde patch for the 2008 R2.
Okay.
Complete.
We're talking Heartbleed or something else?
We are talking about one
Spectre,
of the
Meltdown,
I don't remember which one was it, but I remember that this was completely out of the service cycle. It was completely out of everything that Microsoft does.
Oh, I get it.
They just said, I think it was Heartbleed.
One of those three.
But I remember that they created a patch because they needed to acknowledge that people are still running 2003 and 2008 and R2.
And those are very different operating systems.
Yes, and the other thing was that they actually created a patch for those two. Mm-hmm. Not for every operating system between 2003 and 2008 R2, but those two. Because specifically those two are
because
the ones
nobody runs 2008 original edition. Nobody.
Yes, and the people who are running it are religiously running it.
I wouldn't put that on my computer or on my server. If you gave me the lottery ticket that wins the lottery, I would much rather not have it. But that's how much I dislike it. 2008 R2, on the other hand, yeah, I would. That's that those funny things that people say they would carry something to the deserted island. That's the OS to take to deserted island. It's unbreakable.
Okay, I have some other ideas about taking the
me too, but
Oasis to deserted islands, but yes, okay.
From the Microsoft stack, that's the one for me.
If I had to choose anything from the Microsoft stack to take with me to deserted island,
DOS 622.
It wouldn't be probably Microsoft Coming Chat.
No, if you ask me, and this is a hint for a future episode. If you ask me which version of Microsoft OS I would like to run today, or that I would probably take to a deserted island to rival 2008 or 2, it would be OS 2.
Yes. When somebody mentions OS2, I remember one distinct feature that it had that was completely out of its time, out of its reach, and basically it was there for no reason at all. Do you remember that OS2 had a CD player?
Yes.
Because this was something that was used in the back in the day.
And it had the capability to play the multimedia thingies, yes.
No, it had the capability to directly grab digital data from the CD and
Yes.
then decode it.
Yeah.
And it made for much better sound because you completely went
And preemptive multitasking and workplace shell
yes, but,
and
but the thing that I remember
compatibility
is
with
that
Microsoft
this
apps.
was the first time when I realized that the digital audio converter that is supplied on the CD player is basically a piece of junk because it is just a cheap piece of software, and then the software itself is capable of doing much more.
Yeah.
And also, you could also grab the MP3s there, not MP3s, but MP2s,
Later on, yes.
raw directly from the CD and then convert.
What we used to call CD ripping. Yeah.
Yes, because you didn't need to see the rip.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
would
yeah, I
just
know.
drag and drop the files.
Yeah. And that's because of the object nature of OS2,
Yes.
which was basically the first popular operating system that had it.
I miss Plan 9.
Yeah, okay, stop there. No more OS2. There are actually, there's a long list of reasons why I really still very much like using 2008 or 2. And for some reason, it still brings the smile to my face. And from IT perspective, yet again. First and foremost, it was the first Microsoft operating system that was 64-bit only. So that marked the transition. And it was done very well. It was really scalable, 256 cores. It had a lot of additions to various types of services, new additions to remote desktop, new version of Hyper-V that almost worked, almost being a problem with snapshots, but that's a topic for another day. It supported live migration out of the box with Hyper-V Manager. You don't have to have additional apps for that. It had Server Core Edition for the first time as well. New version of PowerShell came into it. We had remote server management capabilities as well. And basically 2008 R2 marks the beginning of the story of another application that we still use to this very day for management, which is Active Directory Administrative Center, which in the original, let's say, time at the time when it was released, was used by many for one specific feature that was added in Active Directory when you raise the domain and functional and domain enforced functional levels to 2008 R2, which is Active Directory Recycle Bin. Super important feature. And actually, lack of that support for Active Directory Recycle Bin came to bite me in the behind almost 10 years later with one of the companies that I still work for, because they didn't have it and they deleted an OU with users, and it was a shit show. Pardon me saying that. Domains and trusts, two-way trusts, incoming, outgoing trusts, all of that was a part of 2008 R2. And this still runs, no issues whatsoever with it.
I just realized that you and me have a very distinct difference, which is that you get, for some reason, you create a relationship between you and different operating systems, different versions of something. And I honestly, after all these years, 30 or more, I honestly don't care. I want my operating system to work. I remember when it started working, and I usually hope that Microsoft is not going to break it in the version right now. When I'm thinking about Windows Server way back, I know that the last version had a lot of problems.
Still has.
So I put a big X on it. I'm going to ignore it because the next version is going to be okay.
Yeah, but you are much more beta tested than me. I'm much more analytical. We already talked about this. And I remember these pros and cons because I spent hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of hours of working with with those services. So yes, that tends to stick with me. I tend to remember these things, not because of malice or wanting to
But I
remember.
also did the hundreds of hours, but I just stopped caring about different.
I cannot afford to do that. There are
okay.
business reasons
Me
why.
Me neither. But I stopped caring.
Yeah, but you then have to use a lot of extra documentation that I
Yes.
don't.
Yes,
That's the difference.
yes.
So for me, it's actually a part of the time-saving mechanism in a sense.
And to be completely honest, part of the time saving mechanism for me is to be able to call you
Yes.
and ask you for different things, and
Joker.
you seem to remember. You are a joker on the phone, yes, but you seem to remember particular details that nobody cares about except you, and this is a good thing.
Yeah, it's always good to know a guy.
You need to know people who are just into petty details of what Microsoft did.
Today I had the same thing on my course. I'm doing a Vera as orchestrator and Power CLI course for VMware this week. And today we were configuring Windows remote management, so PS remoting. And I did this millions of times. And after we were done with the lecture, which lasted 2 times as long because I wanted to give them the overview of the technology as well, apart from the things that we needed to do on the slides, and give them some practical examples, which is always good when you do a course. Then we went to the labs, and none of those people, and they're quite experienced. They're really good people in terms of knowledge, but they didn't configure this all that much. So I started punching in commands for all of them in their remote sessions, and all of the Windows remote management WinRM commands, I just type them from, my fingers know that. I don't think about it, it's just WinRM quick config, blah, 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 trusted hosts, blah, 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 blah. They were just looking at me as if I'm crazy. Exactly as you're saying, I remember these petty details. It's not that I remember necessarily the petty details, it's the fingers remember. That comes from
but this is also one other thing that every administrator's fingers remember some things.
For me, it's a long-term thing related to music as well. So
yes, this is
different.
one of those things. But also for me, for example, I usually switch to Joe editor in Linux.
Me too.
And I usually use Screen, not
Me
only because they work.
They're excellent.
But also because when I need to do, when my brain creates a thought of I need a different session,
Screen enter.
I just do I just do Control A C,
yes,
and I'm used to just doing it at Control A N. And
you don't think about it, or
yes,
Control A X with Joe and whatever.
Yes, and this is one of those things that you just want to be able to do wherever you're doing something. Because while in the school, people usually talk to you and say you need to know this. When they wake you up, you need to actually be able to recite this.
Yeah, in 3 a.m.
Yes, and then when you become a sysadmin or a DevOps guy or whatever, suddenly this 3 a.m. thing happens. Somebody actually wakes you up in 3 a.m. because they need something to be done. And then it helps that you have muscle memory for some things, because you are basically cheating. You are while
that's how you call it.
While you are trying to get your brain up and running, you are going through the muscle memory items and to the memory items that you are remembering by heart and by your muscles, and reading from the screen, hoping that something is going to pop up before your brain wakes up.
This actually, realistically speaking, and it's irrelevant to our topic, just to mention, it's a part of the long-term education that I received. When you're dealing with music, so I finished primary, secondary musical school, have perfect pitch, whatnot. But the way in which you are taught to deal with the notes and the rhythm and everything, and prima vista, reading of stuff, etc. The only way in which you can become good at that is to develop special skills with relation to memory. There is no other way.
Yes, I know.
If you want to be good at that. And I always wanted to be good at that, just a little bit differently to what they were teaching us. But that's a part of the James Dean mechanism that we all have. But that evolved into what I have today. I do have certain eidetic memory capabilities when we're talking about the things that are related to IT, because my fingers are like a part of the eidetic memory system. I seem to remember stuff. I just type them in twice and I remember them. I mean, screen, We used Screen first time in 1994, 1995.
Yes, and this is
30 years ago.
And this is the reason why I don't understand MOOCs.
The what?
MOOCs.
Yeah, but don't use that.
Tmax is
first thing that I install on my Linux machine, just like use Joe and Screen. Let's go.
Tmax is much more capable application than
I
Screen.
don't care.
But the reason why I'm not using it is because they decided to switch Control A to Control B. This is the single reason. This is the single reason why
I just did a LPIC course, so Linux Professional Institute course, a couple of weeks ago, and I showed them both the Tmax and the Screen, and they were asking me about what do you use. I was like, Screen, of course. Why? Because it's so deeply like imprinted in my my finger memory. I don't think about it. Screen, Enter, Control C, Control Alt 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can name the screens, all of that. Yeah, but again, going off topic.
Which is something that you don't do.
Always do, yes. Okay, next version was 2012. I would actually kind of go right to 2012 R2 and kind of bundle them together, because 2012 and 2012 R2 are the operating systems that marked Microsoft's migration towards some other parts of the market. And while developing 2012 generation of Windows Server, they invested heavily into storage components of Windows. This is where we got the deduplication, some encryption capabilities. This is where we got storage pools and stuff like that. Synchronous, asynchronous replicas evolved from that as well. This marked actually Microsoft's obvious turning point in terms of we want to go after the SME market with relation to storage services as well, so that people don't have to buy Synology's, QNAPs and whatnots. That's the first part of the story. And the second part of the story is that they, because of the fact that they started supporting SMB free and whatnot, you could create highly available Windows file server, and you could put Hyper-V disks on top of it and create a highly available failover cluster, which in the past was only possible if you had some kind of a usually block storage that was usually FC, which meant that the entry price to have a highly available environment was much smaller than it was before that.
Yes, but let's now go a little bit off topic.
Okay. Really? How strange for us.
Yes, but what I want to point out is that did you ever make the connection that this was at the same time when Microsoft created the biggest change in the Exchange they had?
Yeah.
And do you remember what it was? Do you remember upgrading in 2010 when you needed to upgrade from the Exchange that was current at that time to the next version, that your mailbox suddenly became a couple of times bigger than it used to be?
Yeah, I know what you
when they introduced the legislative code, and when they removed the duplication of messages inside the
It's
mailboxes.
not the duplication. But yes, it's similar to the duplication, but it's not called that way.
Yeah, it was,
the way in which
it was linking, and it wasn't the actual duplication. But
me Exchange trainer, you noob. Just kidding, of course. The way in which the let's say that you CC'd 20 people in the email on the same Exchange server.
Yes.
In Exchange 2010 up to 2010, it's not the duplication; it's different, but it's similar in functionality. Those emails were not saved 10 times. They were saved once and referenced 10 times objectively. After that, 2013 plus, they removed that feature for no apparent reason. Thank you, Microsoft. Because in 2014, they rewrote the whole store stack and everything in Exchange. In first version, they actually removed public folders. Everybody was very happy about that. Everybody hated them. Then they actually brought the public folders back and made them the part of database availability group, which we didn't have before. So we could make public folders highly available for the first time in the history of Exchange. Damn it.
The thing is that I know the reason behind it, because I was trying to find out why did Microsoft screw things up so badly. And there were two reasons.
Again.
There were two reasons. First reason was that Microsoft had a meeting, and then they decided that what they're going to do is that they're not going to save resources anymore on the servers.
Okay.
So they decided that the disk space is so cheap
Correct.
That you shouldn't be caring about disk space.
Correct.
And this is the reason why at the same time they started working on storage spaces and all the different technologies connected to disks, and decided that DUGs are a thing.
The way to do it.
The way to do it. in
Which it
Exchange.
is.
Yes, and the other thing was the actual legislative hold.
Okay.
Legislative hold was a thing that they had to do because people were asking for it.
Of course.
And once they, so let me just try to explain what legislative hold is because you're the trainer. Please.
The idea of legislative hold is related to situations when, let's say, company employees leak stuff or send stuff that they shouldn't. Litigation hold enables you to kind of keep evidence of them doing the wrong things related to, let's say, also data loss prevention methodologies, which can then become a part of the you getting fired and then you getting sued.
And
that's what the litigation
the thing that they need to do when they're doing that, they need to preserve the original versions of all the messages.
Yes, and in a separate mailbox usually, but there are policies.
If you are referencing messages, it becomes a big problem because then you need to create copies of the messages for some people, and you are creating a nightmare on the part of the Exchange server.
Yeah.
So what they did is they decided that, okay, we are not going to be saving the disks anymore because it's much quicker to have everything indexed in different databases. So in DUGs, you can create different databases of different disks. So you can do a smart algorithm to find things when searching works in
Which
Exchange.
is what they implemented in SQL later as well.
Yes, and then when they basically did the search in Exchange, so nobody is able to find anything anymore.
That's Office 365, not Exchange.
No, but in the Outlook,
I know.
Yes. So it's not that I'm not going to take that any Microsoft search is going to work for more than a year after it has been released. Then it's
Exchange
going to be
search in Exchange 2010. I have it for. Let's see. So I took over that in 2005. We upgraded in 2012, I think. So 10 years, 11 years. So Exchange indexing, which is in the back end of the search mechanism, I had to reset it once.
Yes, but Microsoft searches
generally
are
work.
like wine.
Yeah.
Some vintages are good. And
most of them are crap.
Most of them are crap, and some are deadly.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go into details about this, but
that's more than enough.
But as I said, around 2010, they decided that they're going to completely create the operating system and create everything around the operating system in a different way.
Yeah.
They stopped saving memory.
Yeah.
If you remember that people...
That's not the only story. They actually rewrote large portions of the operating system, especially Exchange, because they moved architecture from multiple services to 2 services, then into 1, which they announced way beforehand. So that was very customer friendly. But they rewrote a lot of the code so that it becomes much more efficient. And it was.
Yes, but it's not only that. It's if you remember back the way then when Windows 7 came out, and then Windows 7 was more or less superseded by Windows 8, and then Windows 8 1, because we remember Windows 8 existed.
No, we don't. We don't want to. We have a black hole in the memory for that time period.
Yes, but one of the biggest changes is that people kept bothering other users is why is my Windows using all the memory available?
Yeah.
And the reason that most people don't understand is that if you have a computer that has a large amount of memory, and you are not using the memory, you are basically wasting resources. Yeah. Because not using the memory is wasting resources. Yeah. And this is what Microsoft did. They decided to use the entire memory, not to leave part of the memory free for no particular reason, but if they're able to cache something, cache it.
Okay.
They did the preloading stuff. So you actually got the scripts for preload services, DLS, and different algorithms that enable them to preload stuff into memory. You got disk usage way up because they stopped trying to save disks. But at the same time, the operating system actually became better.
It was, much better.
So I think that up to Microsoft basically did a big leap up to duck all from 2003 to 2008. 2008 was another big year for them, and then they waited until 2010, and then I think the next big version was actually Windows 10, because because in between there lies madness.
Yeah.
Windows 8.1, Windows 8.
Again, no Windows 8.
As I said, so since you have a photographic memory, do you remember what Windows 8 was known for?
Apart from not working properly.
Yes, but why did they change that? To change it, what was the biggest thing that they needed to change?
For me, the user interface was annoying as hell after Windows 7, which had Classic.
Yes.
And in Windows 8, we all went Classic Shell or something like that to get that feeling back, you know.
Because I don't remember what was the particular thing that they wanted to target to specifically.
Oh, they wanted to create an operating system that would work both on desktops and tablets. That's what they tried.
Yes, but I don't remember which feature was the one that they targeted to be removed from Windows 8 to Windows 8.1, and why did they need to so quickly replace the Windows 8?
Because Windows 8 were crashing all the time.
Okay.
It just didn't work.
Yes, but I would expect them to create something like second edition or whatever, not calling, because there is no other version of Windows that had version 0.1.
Yeah, I know. I completely understand what you want to say. But for me, the fact that they did issue 8.1 was a lifesaver, just like you. Although I could tell you a tale of 1,000 years of infinite reboots of Windows 8.1 updates. You remember those things in the old office. I could leave my HP PC to do a particular update, and then it would just endlessly reboot after that. So I had to do restore, and then again after a month.
I must say that this is
But apart from that, 8.1 for me.
But to be completely personal with you now, with this Windows update with Windows 8 and Windows 8.1 was one of those things when I first saw that you were capable of just silently ignoring the problem, accepting the fate, and accepting that this is not ever going to get better.
Yeah, why?
Because it's Microsoft.
No, it's not because Microsoft. There's another reason. Because I had a very, very good laptop with Windows 7.
Oh, okay.
Like I usually have something with a little bit of an older version that usually works. One other feature that I didn't mention, which is hugely important for us, actually we are discontinuing it now in the company these days, is Windows 2008 and 2008 or 2 introduced direct access. In 2012, the wizard for it was heavily upgraded, and it was much easier to use. And to be quite honest, if I were to select a technology by Microsoft that I really always liked and will always like, it is direct access. It is like a VPN methodology that you can use. Difference being that you don't have to do VPN connection, configuration, whatnot. The computer, as soon as it smells the sound, the smell of internet, automatically connects to your corporate network, which is awesome because you don't have to manage that at all. It is managed by group policy. We are discontinuing it because Microsoft basically discontinued it years ago for, again, no apparent reason whatsoever.
And I must say that now having a capability to do this is something that is enabling WireGuard.
Yeah.
That I'm pretty big fan of.
FortiClient has the feature to automatically connect as well.
Okay, but WireGuard is much closer to what the direct access was meant to be.
Okay.
So it is capable of understanding where you are. In a very limited fashion, but it's capable of doing this, and it is capable of just routing the traffic that you actually need to a particular network, and then leaving all the other traffic outside, and without having to pay a license for everything that you do.
Actually, they did kind of replace it with some other technologies. There are, since with the Windows 2012 or 2 or 2006, you can have what Microsoft calls app-based VPNs.
Yes.
You can start a browser, try to load the web page that's in your corporate network. It will, based on that application, it will connect to your corporate network. Problem being that this was, I think, and still is configured via PowerShell, which is superbly difficult. I wanted to add one more thing because I forgot about this. This is something that Microsoft should be commended for. in 2012 and 2012 R2, along with all of the storage things that I already mentioned that they did. They heavily upgraded DFS, which started working perfectly. They added SMB 3.0, file servers started working well. One other feature was added, which was SMB over RDMA. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this, most people don't use it and don't care about it at all, is actually because some other vendors, especially in the virtualization market, only recently implemented RDMA features in the past version or two. So back then, they were quite like forward thinking in a sense, because that's the technology that is going to be and already is kind of the technology that we are going to use to have low latency, high bandwidth access to storage. That is the technology that's right now on the market, the thing, the zenith of the thing.
Okay.
So very, very important. I almost forgot about that. So that wouldn't be okay.
As I said, I sometimes forget things because I try to push them back in my memory. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when Microsoft introduced the Windows 8 look into the Windows Server?
Yes.
And this confusing thing when you had, if you wanted to shut down the server, you had to wait on the upper right corner and wait for the sidebar to appear.
Yesterday, I had to fix our DA server because it was having digestive problems. So I had to log into 2012, and this is exactly what happened to me. You have to go to lower right part, so that not so much start menu as much as sidebar start, so that you can press a button, so that you can press another button, so that you can reboot.
And this is one of the most amazing features that was introduced, because way back then, I can
top that. Windows Server 2022 has the capability to have that start button on the left-hand side where it belongs. But if you want to log off or restart, for example, if you are the regular user, you press one button, then you press switch user, and then on top of that, another menu, sub-menu opens so that you can restart, reboot, shut down, whatever. Why? We already had a solution for that in Windows XP.
But what I like about Microsoft is that what they did is that they implemented UI change,
which sucks.
No, but although all of them were using virtualization back then, and then they introduced a change that basically meant for every administrator, it meant hovering about the right edge of the screen somewhere on your monitor and trying to find out what the magic pixel is.
Yes, exactly that. It's like looking at some kind of weird magic happening without knowing how it happens.
Because
while trying to do it, because you are the instigator of that
when
magic.
I first tried it, I was completely puzzled because I said, we are using almost exclusively, we are using virtual machines. Mm-hmm. Nobody is logged in the console. I don't have one-to-one pixel mapping. Mm-hmm. So I need to find the magic pixel that is going to be resized. And I need to find it somewhere in my screen while trying to remain my composure, because I need to wait for the thing to appear. And it is going to slide in, usually over a slow connection, and then I need to push something, and if I just simply go out of the window, it's going to just escape, and I'm going to need to do it again. It's just one of those things which are completely amazing to me. I'm not even mad at Microsoft. It's amazing.
You know how we said in the previous episode that in IT everything went to hell when we started having IRQ lines, hardwired, whatnot. For me, the moment where I started noticing all of the things that you kind of like just said that I notice way too much and I am obsessed with, which I'm not, it's subconscious. Actually, the situation that meant that for me wasn't the IRQ lines and whatnot. It was when Microsoft started playing around with the look and feel of the GUI when they removed the classic theme. This is when my, let's say, much more pronounced critical appreciation of Microsoft, which sometimes is a little overly critical, and I'm aware of that, came out, because they pissed me off to no end, just like many millions of users apart from me, just like you, because I know you were pissed at this, because that didn't need any change.
But I wasn't even pissed. I was just flabbergasted. I was just looking at it. No. You just take a look at it and say, okay, I understand this on the desktop.
What does the poet mean by this?
No, but I can understand this on the desktop. but everybody is using virtualization. This is going to be a screen that is going to change size, it is going to be resized, it's going to be remapped, and you just stop, and then you realize that they are still going to reuse 640 480 resolution for the default resolution for the virtual machine. Say, okay, what
the last
about
time
this?
the monitors were that, let's say, poorly in resolution was 20 years ago.
Yes,
as a default VGA
yes,
resolution.
to put it into perspective, it's a lower resolution than what iWatch has today.
Yeah, to put it in perspective. But yeah, actually, to your point, and to be a little bit funny about it, I saw an article a couple of weeks ago. Some guy made some kind of a script or something, which can bring back the classic theme look and feel to Windows 10 and Windows 11. That's what I'm talking about. People are really pissed off at that still today, many years later.
But I'm not against stuff changing on the Windows 11.
Sorry, you want to tell me that Windows 11 taskbar is something that was thought out well? Come on, man.
I would just call it extremely big A/B testing, psychological testing on users.
Yeah, UX testing meets psychological testing.
But I want to see what the B looks like. The B looks like, because the A sucks.
Yes.
I just want to see what the B looks like, because I'm completely sure that this wasn't the first idea. Mm-hmm. I know that they were trying to steal the idea of Mac, and it was the wrong idea to steal, because on the Mac, the thing that mostly dislike, on the idea that I mostly dislike is the idea of having a taskbar in the center.
Okay.
But at least they created a consistent experience there.
On Mac, that works.
That works, but it works because it was thought out.
Yeah.
On Windows, you just actually feel like somebody got the task of taking the start menu, put it in the center, and then saying, okay,
and go get cupcake.
Now I need to do something with it. So let's create a window out of thin air for no reason at all.
Yeah, I've been using Macs forever, just like you. And actually, the idea of that centered the menu and the taskbar, which is located like this in the center of the screen, which can then expand and shrink, and you can actually manage that as well, came way, way before anything like this happened in Windows.
To be completely honest, I would pretty much like to have my start button on the top left. Thank you.
You like Linux?
Yes, like all the decent operating systems, including the Mac.
Mm-hmm.
Just have the whatever button you need to start activities.
Mm-hmm. Activities in Linux,
yes, in Linux. So on the top left, and that's it. Because this is the thing, and this is the place where it doesn't.
It's not in the way.
It's not in the way. I dislike macOS idea of having the close button on the top left.
Okay, I've gotten used to that many months ago, and I agree with you. By the way.
I think that the normal thing for a person is to have the close button on the bottom right, because you're reading from left to right and from top to bottom. So when you're finishing something, you are expecting the finish to be in the end of the screen, not at the start of the screen.
And absolutely nobody would agree with you because of the habits and the history. I understand what you're talking about. This is more related to UI UX design. I actually agree with you on the idea, but this wouldn't work. People would hate it.
But Microsoft does it. Exit is usually on the top right, bottom right.
Top right.
No, bottom right, exit. When you're exiting something, it's usually on the bottom right. And the other thing is that Microsoft is trying to be sort of kind of consistent about it. macOS is not that much, doesn't have that much consistency. But okay, let's finish with the Windows Server 2022.
And 16 and 19, because we can bundle them all together.
No, we cannot.
Yes, we can.
No, we cannot. 2019 works.
At least I disagree.
It's capable of creating users.
You mean after you log in as administrator and it asks you, do you have permission to do that? and or
No,
does
no,
the same
this
thing.
this was the 2000. This was 2019.
And 22 and 19 and 22 both did it in some versions. And for network configuration, remember
Yes,
that one?
and network configuration for some reason is this is the most flabbergasting moment.
Yeah, he
after
does a lab with students. He is the domain admin on the machine. He right clicks on the network icon on the right hand side in the taskbar. Right clicks wants to do network configuration, and it asks him for a password.
No, it doesn't ask you for a password.
No, actually, it shows
No,
an error.
it just throws an error. You
Yeah.
need to be administrator to do this.
And you have to go to registry to fix that. There is a known fix for that.
Yes, but the problem is that I'm an administrator working at the server console. Okay, regardless of what it is a VM, but I'm at the server console. I can change all the settings while I'm logged in as an administrator. I install domain services. I promote the server to domain controller.
Okay.
Now I become the domain admin because there is no other thing that I can become after this. The local administrator becomes disabled by default.
That's okay.
And then the domain admin doesn't have permission to change the IP settings. And
Whatever went wrong there, you know.
and the thing is that suddenly you are just completely lost because you are administrator. I have also one more thing. I was doing something on a machine a couple of days ago. I was testing something on a machine that was connected to my, because I'm trying to create an Active Directory at home. Don't ask me. Anyways, I'm trying to do something at home. I'm experimenting, and I connected the machine to the Active Directory, and I created a user that is a domain admin on the local machine. I logged in as a domain admin to the local workstation, and I was trying to change the user access control. I was trying to lower it way down. You cannot do this. If the user is a local user, even if it's domain admin, it's not permitted to change the user access control unless it has local admin group
rights, yes.
or local admin group, not local admin rights, local admin group
Membership.
membership
Yeah,
on the
that's
local
what that's what I wanted to say. Yeah, completely pointless. Yeah, I know. Just
And it took me maybe 10 minutes to understand which kind of
you know
admin do I need to
that
be.
Tom and Jerry episode when Jerry is looking through the memories that he had with
Yes.
Tom, and then Tom comes at the end and smacks him with a cake,
Yes.
and Jerry just says,
Yes, that's just one of those things when you could say, okay, why do I have different types of admins if the top level admin is unable to change something? So how is it possible that I can be a top level admin in the domain, but still being unable to change a simple thing on the local computer? And why?
some kind of new the role-based access control that we don't want to hear about, probably.
Or we want to hear about, but nobody decided to mention it.
Yeah, no memo.
Yes. So
Actually, so to your point, 2016 was way better than both of them. Well, I can actually show you many reasons why, and I could do that for just fun's sake. But most of the advancements that were made from 2016 to 2002 were much smaller and much more incremental than what it used to be in the past. 2012 or 2 were fundamental shift in the model of and in things that Microsoft do and how they do it because of the storage change and whatnot. But 2016 did not have a long list of new things. There were some things related to Hyper-V, shielded VMs. Nobody uses that I know of. There were some small changes to ADFS and web application proxy, some new configuration methods. They switched to DFS as a methodology to replicate Active Directory, which is a good thing, definitely. They introduced the capability to do a little bit of PowerShell DSC. Basically, Ansible meets the idea of PowerShell as well. There were actually changes on the in terms of additional service network controller. I did quite a few demos with this in front of my students. It never finished successfully, always throws me an error, whatever. And there were quite a few additional security technologies. So credential guard, the device guard, Windows Defender was added, whatnot. In 2019, basically nothing really new to add, a little bit more of additional hardware support for storage class memory, resilient file system deduplication was supported in 2019, although resilient file system
work?
yeah And resilient file system was there already for many, many years. Actually, I remember some of the materials for Exchange 2013 or 16 when they were swearing that we should put Exchange database on resilient file system. Nobody did that. And they made a huge hoopla of basically in 2019, they started shifting and forcing us to look towards either hyper-converged type of environment or to go hybrid cloud or something like that. This is where Azure Stack came out and stuff like that. And generally speaking, in 2022, nothing really of note to kind of like really, be very ecstatic about. Storage replica compression, support for some more Azure Stack related things like hyper-converged environments on Azure Stack. They added some bits and pieces to SMB, so latest support for SMB 3.1.1 for quick. There's a new protocol, completely irrelevant. There were some security additions. UEFI secure boot was changed, virtualization based security. They're mostly stuff related to security actually there, and nothing more. But generally speaking, those three OSs are more alike than they're different. All three of them.
Let me just propose an idea on how to rate Microsoft OSs.
Okay.
Because I can see in all this madness, I can see a steady way to understand which version is better than the other versions.
Okay.
So let's consider this. 2016 was what I would consider feature freeze. Basically, when they said they created all the other operating system up until then point.
You mean that's the place where they should have just go from 2016 to just Windows Server and then onwards?
Yes.
Is that a metaphor?
Yes, because what they did is 2019 and 2022 look like just cosmetic. We have to release something versions.
Okay.
And I think that what my proposal is, let's take a look at forest functional levels.
Okay. They stopped at 2016.
Yes. And this is my point.
Okay.
When they stopped developing functional levels, this means that they ran out of things that they needed to put into the forest.
Okay, that doesn't have to be bad.
Yes. No, it's amazing. So this means that currently they don't have any idea what to do on the enterprise level. So they just need to change the interface and change small things.
Apart from that small thing that I did with PowerShell and AD users, which crashed my domain controller, yes, everything works well.
I think this is because they are just now probably lost the entire team that was doing the Active Directory, because from 2016 to 2022, it's 6 years. So it's eons in Microsoft space.
Technology terms.
In technology terms, so probably a team went offline, working from home, eating avocados, not coming back to the...
Going to Bali.
Yes, not coming back to the office because they are now completely fine with whatever has been done. So this is one of those...
Enjoying their life's work.
Yes. So I think that this is. I think that we should be following not the Windows versions, but the forest levels versions.
So we don't have to follow anything anymore.
So if there is in the next version of Windows Server, if there is a forest update, then we should be looking into it as a new version of Windows. Unless there is a forest update or forest functionality update, we don't care.
Okay. On that notion, run forest run. It's time to. Yeah, it's just wordplay. It's time to end the episode.
Okay.
So, good discussion yet again. We have many more of these coming, but until they do, and until we do some new episodes, I've been Medan, he's been Yasmin, and bye-bye.
Bye.